Good evening, everyone. This is Superintendent Joe Core. We are here on our PAC meeting for April, and we are going to be focusing this evening on the transportation schedule and the modifications that we intend to bring into effect for September. So I think without further ado, Jane, do you want to bring up the presentation? And thank you very much, Jane. So why don't we go to the first slide and we take a look at the three pillars here. So the three pillars are extremely important, and all throughout the budget season, we stated that this was the lens through which we do our planning and our visioning. It's also the lens through which we are making this proposal here. And, you know, we are in the process of constantly reviewing our practices and seeing, you know, how are we doing? How are we doing in terms of identifying and addressing the continuity of learning? How are we doing when it comes to promoting excellence and narrowing opportunity gaps for each and every child? And how are we doing in the area of ensuring student safety and social emotional well-being? So we look at that, and this is the spirit in which this change is proposed. Because basically it was an examination of existing schedules, and particularly with their impact on the middle school, that prompted us to propose this change for the upcoming school year. So let's look a little bit at our background here, and let's go to the next slide, please, Jane. Thank you very much. Okay, so the background of this goes back to the building project, which the voters approved in May of 2017, and we commenced our construction in May, June of 2018. So as a precursor to the project, we had to do a state environmental quality review. That's the acronym SEQR, S-E-Q-R, is used to describe that. What you have to do is, before you embark upon any building project, any public works, you have to look at what the environmental impact is. So we were proposing that we were going to move all the sixth grades to the now existing middle school. So the potential impact was that you would now have transportation of 2,000 high school students plus 1,500 middle school students. That was 3,500 students all at once. And so that was a big consideration in the traffic. And so there was a traffic impact study. And so one of the SEQR requirements that was instituted on the building project was essentially we had to stagger the school openings, and we had to put the middle school and the high school on separate bus runs, right? And so that was adopted in a resolution by our Board of Education prior to commencing the project. In September 2021, the middle school finally opened as a full middle school. You remember last year that due to social distancing and COVID-19, we had grades 4 through 6 at the middle school. We were proud of the fact that we were able to hold school each and every day. But this was our first official opening of a 6, 7, 8 middle school. So the background again, to review it, state environmental quality review, that is a requirement. We looked at it. The end result, the short message was we had to put the middle school and the high school on separate runs because of the traffic impact. So let's look at some of the current concerns that exist here with the middle school transportation plan. Let's go to that. So the current concerns with middle school transportation. And you know, there are some major concerns, and they really do impact our ability to deliver on our three pillars. So let's look at the top one, and this is a big one. So in the morning, we know that middle school buses are consistently arriving 15, 20 minutes after the start of the instructional day. And going back to Monday morning, we had 9 buses, and that constituted approximately 150 students arrived late after first period started. So we know that's unacceptable. And it's not that we haven't been working at it all year long since September, doing tweaks to our route, but we still, it's really a structural issue. It's related to traffic on 155. It's a problem that we absolutely have to address. So you can imagine if you're a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader, and you're consistently late to school, coming into school, you're starting school 5, 10, 15 minutes late. You're missing out on instructional time, but just think also in terms of the start to your day, the rushing, the stress that's involved, that's not conducive to good learning. I'd also like to note too, that Monday morning where we had 9 buses or 150 students arrive after the start of first period, that was a good weather day. Wasn't raining even, certainly no winter weather at all. The other problem too, again, we think about this. So you're a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader. You're trying to get breakfast, okay, because maybe you didn't get breakfast in the morning. And then you're trying to go to PE. So this is not the way we want to start the school day. And so we put that up there as bullet 1 intentionally, okay, because this is a problem we need to address. The second bullet is also important. So afternoon ride times have gotten significantly longer than they should have to be. Students are arriving home after 5 p.m. So currently, our entire fleet of school buses, and this is a structural problem with transportation. So you take a look in the afternoon, our buses disperse all throughout the district from the high school. They then return back to the elementary schools, pick up students, and then they have to go back to the middle school and out again. So our entire fleet of school buses has to return from all these elementary runs. They are coming back in. They're coming back into the central location of Route 155 and go back out all over the district just in the beginning of rush hour. So it delays our buses. It's a compounding effect on the strong traffic issues in the town. We have a lovely residential setting in North County, but we are a town, or this part of the town is a town of side streets and 2-lane roads. Okay, so there's not a lot of space for traffic. So naturally, that's conducive to clogging, specifically on rush hour, where 155 is a major thoroughfare. So that is a problem. Another issue, when we look at equity and we look at social emotional learning, the late dismissal is precluding middle school students after school extra help and extracurricular activities. So this is an important component of middle school. So when we opened the 6th grade and brought the 6th grade in, and we have done a very remarkable job here of having extracurriculars and clubs for 6th graders at the middle school. But it could be even better if we did change the start time and the dismissal time for middle schoolers. Right now, with dismissal starting around 4 o'clock and really going through till about 4:30, this is causing obstacles for our students. It's making it difficult for them to stay for extra academic help in specific subject areas. Extracurricular activities, and of note, those who are participating in sports. So we have a number of our 7th and 8th graders who may participate in high school sports at the freshman level, at the JV level, and in some cases at the varsity level. But certainly many who choose to participate in the modified level in grades 7 and 8. It's making it very late, particularly when they have a contest. And so what they have to do is they are leaving their classes. Many are missing their last class multiple times a week, and in some cases, they are missing the last class plus part of the period prior to that. So that is a factor that is not acceptable to us either. And I think that, again, the separate middle school bus run, so we're putting lots of buses, about 25 buses out on the road at rush hour time. And so that is a complicating factor, not for only for traffic throughout the town, but it's also a complicating factor for just basically getting our students delivered home in a timely manner. So let's take a look at the next slide, please. So when we look at considerations for improving our schedules, so number one, we want a schedule that can guarantee that all our middle school students will arrive on time for the start of the school day. It should be a schedule whereby they can come to school, go to their locker, get some breakfast, and then settle into the day and be ready for learning. And that is the goal. We also want to, because of the late start, access to extra help has been limited at the middle school, and we want to rectify that. So we want to rectify it in a way that students can have ready access to teachers, and then also be guaranteed transportation home as part of that. We want to improve access to extracurricular activities at the middle school. So we don't want students who are participating in the modified levels or freshman, JV, or varsity in some cases. We don't want them missing a class or a class and a half at the end of the school day. We want that access. We want also to be able to have some of our students more easily and more readily share classes at the high school. We have a small number of students who do that. We have to do something to facilitate that more. We also know that any move we make will have an impact on students, families, and staff with another scheduled change. So again, we recognize that. We don't minimize that impact, but we also look too at the fact that we have nearly 1,500 middle school students who are being negatively impacted by this schedule that exists right now. Being good stewards of the environment, we also have to take a look at environmental impacts. So again, at the wrong time, we are adding to traffic volume, therefore adding to stress among the town residents. Gas usage is increased by people staying in traffic. And we always have to keep in mind the state environmental quality review. That's imperative. So that really is important. And then there is a nationwide bus driver shortage. So we have to craft a plan that will not require a lot of new drivers, because like every school district in this area, in this state, in the country, we are currently struggling to keep our drivers going. I want to commend our transportation staff. During the height of the COVID surge, we had mornings where we had a number of drivers who were sick or who were in quarantine, but we kept transportation going. We did not have to cut 1 ounce of service throughout COVID-19. And I know Director Town is on this call, and I want to commend her and her staff for their exemplary efforts in this. And finally, we want to meet instructional minute mandates at the secondary level. So that's an option. So we have state mandated instructional minutes. We want those minutes, within those minutes, to be able to provide extra help while simultaneously meeting those instructional minutes. And the state is very particular about the way they count these minutes. You can't count the passing time between classes. You can't count lunch periods, for example. So it's a very strict reporting requirement on instructional minutes, and it's imperative that we meet those mandates. So Jane, let's go to the next slide, please. So what was the process that we looked at the problem? So early on, changes with middle school transportation, the need to change became apparent. And so Director Town and her assistant directors started looking at alternatives. And so throughout the year, we kept trying to make it work. We made tweaks to routes and an existing schedule, looked at arrival and departure at the elementary schools and also at the middle school, really worked to try to make everything run more efficiently, but was trying to squeeze blood out of a stone in this effort. So we, made every effort possible. And so then, what we did here is we began to work with transportation and our central office team as well as our building administrators, we looked at options that would create transportation schedules that would allow schools the same opportunities that existed pre-COVID. So specifically, when we look at our high schoolers and middle schoolers, we want to preserve the opportunities for students to receive additional academic help and in a seamless and not difficult way. We want kids to have access to extracurricular activities after school because now, more importantly than ever, they provide the social emotional learning and the socialization that's so needed in the post-COVID era. We also have this, we have an obligation by the state of New York, this is law, that every private and parochial school within a 15-mile radius of North Colony, we are required to provide transportation. So there are many private schools and parochial schools. Director Town and her staff have looked at how do we efficiently route, how do we make connecting routes to fulfill all our public requirements as well as our private requirements at a time when there is a bus driver shortage that is hitting all throughout the country. So this was the process. So we had to take a look at how do we make this efficient and how do we do it in a way that we can sustain it, both with the numbers of buses and the numbers of drivers that we need. So let's go to the next slide, please. So now we have to take a look at what are the options. So the options are going to be limited due to the seeker requirements. We have to keep the high school and the middle school on separate runs. We also have to work within, as we said, existing transportation resources, bus purchases, as well as drivers. Now, let me just make a note here. With bus purchases, everyone knows that schools receive federal funding and that schools received an increase in their foundation aid. That is all true. But like the rest of the country right now, there is a supply chain and a delivery issue with school buses. So we are at a situation here where, and Director Town, you can correct me on this, that we ordered buses last summer, and are there still some buses that have not yet been delivered?
We had our last buses delivered March 1st that we ordered the previous February. So we ordered them February 21 and they got delivered March 22.
So so if we execute a plan that requires the addition of say 5 or 10 buses in order to actualize it, we've got to be able to deliver on buses that are serviceable and ready to roll. So we have a problem that is now in existence, and we needed to address it for the 22-23 school year. So we looked at, when it boiled down, within those parameters, it boiled down to 2 options. So this is the first option that we considered. We looked at a middle school early start, a 7:10 bus arrival with a 2:17 p.m. bus dismissal. The student day would be 7:30 to 2:17. We then looked at a high school later start, 8 a.m. bus arrival with a 3:12 dismissal, student day 8:15 to 3:02. And then we looked to align all the elementary schools on the same schedule, eliminate the early and late elementary schools. All would come in together. We would have 9 a.m. arrival and a 3:45 to 4 o'clock dismissal. So in analyzing the positives on this, again, there was a 30-minute later start time for high school students. I know many of you are aware that, high school students, it may be better for them to have a later start time. The research generally talks about that start time being, really at 8:30 or later, not necessarily 8 o'clock. So within the current parameters imposed by seeker and the routing, we could start 30 minutes later, but that was the best we could do. And the other pro was that the middle students could ride the high school buses home as late buses if they chose to stay after school. It's important to note that there were several cons or negatives with regard to this. So first of all, it would require more routes and more buses. 5 to 10 additional buses would need to be purchased. And so, yes, there is a cost, but there also is a supply issue related to on-time delivery of these buses. In addition, when we currently have a driver shortage, we would need 5 to 10 additional drivers to be hired. And we know that other districts have changed their schedules to only know that they had to revert to their previous schedule because they didn't have the drivers to make it sustainable and to be able to staff it. In addition, high schoolers would have to stay in the building till 3 a.m. So that would eliminate the current model of after-school help. So the current model of after-school help is high schoolers, their day ends at 2:17. If they're ready to get on the bus and go home, they can do that at 2:17. But teachers and staff are available until 3:08. So teachers are available multiple days a week, at least 3 days a week, if not more, for students to be able to go and get extra help. That's an important component of that. After school, any kind of after school high school activities, extra help, clubs, athletics. So if you're in drama or you're in athletics, it makes extra help less accessible. It would be delayed until 3:15 p.m. The other problem is the bus loop congestion at Shaker Middle School would cause delays elsewhere. So I think, the middle school bus loop currently can hold 15 buses, but we have 25 routes. So again, we would have to start staggering the buses at the middle school dismissal. We would not have the availability of the high school loop at that time because the high school loop is just not available. Cars are parked in there. It's not available. So as a result of that, we would start to replicate the same problem that we have now. And that would be that the buses would not be arriving. There wouldn't be a common dismissal. There wouldn't be a common time where the buses leave the area. And so therefore, as a result, we would start backing up and causing delays throughout the schedule. So again, that's the whole point there. Dismissals would need to happen in waves, not all at once. The process would be delayed. That would impact high school and elementary dismissals. We would start to fall behind. Let's go to option 2. Option 2 is the one we settled on. So essentially, it's keeping the high school schedule virtually the same. 7:30 a.m. start time, dismissal a little earlier at 2:06 p.m. We would move the middle school up an hour from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Okay, that would allow, again, our middle schoolers to complete their academic day and go to the high school sports that they choose to participate in, for example. And we would align all the elementary schools on a schedule where their academic day would start at 9:20 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. The next slide on this will give you the specific times in depth and detail. So please wait on that. What are the pros of this schedule? Basically, transportation knows that they will be able to deliver the middle school bus riders to school on time. Okay, so the problems of dispersing out to all areas of the district, we would be able to concentrate on a middle school arrival in the morning, and the afternoon would be a much smoother base because, again, we would have our middle school buses going out to all corners of the district, and then they would return from the elementary schools. So that's a much more efficient model, and it keeps traffic off 155 or substantially reduces traffic on 155. The middle school rides would not be overly long in the afternoon, so they'd be shorter. We would have more efficient and on-time delivery. Middle school students would have that extra help and increased access to sports and other activities just as they had pre-COVID. So this will be reverting back to the pre-COVID schedule for our middle schoolers, not in terms of the exact schedule, but in terms of the flexibility and availability to, again, sports, after-school activities, and the like, and extra help, of course. Extremely important. Elementary students wouldn't have overly long bus rides as the routes are going to be within the neighborhood. So the buses would be out already in the neighborhoods. They would come back to the schools, and then they don't have to have the battle of returning to 155. And it would require no new buses or drivers. So yes, okay, there's a sustainability factor in terms of bus availability and driver availability. Now, the cons of this is the impact on the elementary schools, particularly for the early elementary school. It is a significant time change. Let's look at the next slide. And this points it out here, and this shows all the detail. So the buses would arrive by 7:10 a.m. Director Town will tell you that's pretty much the time they arrive at the high school. Now, we know we have a lot of drivers. Our seniors can, if they get permission, can drive to school. We have riders, we have parents who drop their students off. But, you know, the buses generally arrive by 7:10. We would begin our first instruction at 7:35. The last period would be 2:06. Buses would be start at 2:12. And then we would have a late bus that would go out at 3:07 p.m. and that would be on the middle school bus. Shaker Middle School would have buses arriving by 8 a.m. First instruction beginning at 8:07. Dismissal beginning at 3 p.m. with the buses departing at 3:07. So middle schoolers would depart probably from the high school loop. They would go over that. They would be, of course, be highly supervised in going over there. And then there would be a late bus run that would be 4 to 4:15 in that neighborhood there for students seeking hubs or extra help or the like. All elementary schools, buses would arrive by 9 a.m. That would be when the doors would open at the elementary schools. First instruction at 9:20. We would begin the dismissal process. Each school would do that individually as they saw fit at 3:30 p.m. Bus departures would be 4 p.m. And we have a homework club that's available now. So 2 days a week, we would have a bus that would provide transportation at 4:40. Again, the notes, elementary schools open their doors at 9 a.m. and each elementary school would conduct its arrival and departure. It would be an individual decision that would be determined by traffic patterns at each of the buildings. That is a principle-based decision. Let's
Mr.
go to
Core,
the next one. Yes.
I just wanted to say about the elementary schools, people may be wondering about the gap from 9 o'clock to 9:20. So students would be in their classrooms at that time. And what the 9:20 is, this is when we start our math block or our ELA block. The 9 to 9:20 time would be used for their morning meeting, for doing the lunch orders, and doing that kind of slow start to the day that they do now as they are in their home base and getting ready. So they'll be with their teachers, they'll be in their classrooms. But the actual instructional periods, if you will, start a little bit later, which is typical to what we do right now.
Yes, that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, let's go to the next slide. So an important component of this is CYC. So CYC is committed to operating the before and after school program based on the new hours. Staff recruitment is underway to accommodate these hours. CYC is very pleased with this proposed schedule. So they feel that this will, basically facilitate their ability to provide before and after school program. We will have increased capacity at our programs in the schools next year. And essentially, CYC also intends to operate a before and after school program at the middle school next year. The final decision will be based on enrollment, and they will make that decision in late spring or early summer to make sure that they have enrollment that is sufficient to support the programming. But they are committed to offering that. So let's go to the next slide, please. And so this is information per CYC. So if you're a current CYC customer, CYC is in the re-enrollment period through April 29th. So if you need to re-enroll or make changes in your request, some people may say, okay, I now maybe need morning. I may not need afternoon, or I had afternoon and now I don't need it, but that you can call CYC at this number, 518-438-9596. Molly, I see you have something in the chat. You can enter them in the chat, or at the end of the meeting here, we'll also go back to the group and you can ask them in person. I want to let you know about that. Can we go back to the upper slide? Go back a slide, please. Can we go back a slide?
I apologize.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And just if you're a family new to the CYC program, like more information, again, you can email CYC@countyucenter.org. Essentially, CYC questions go to info@countyucenter.org. And thank you, Jane. Can we now go to the next slide?
One more second. I just wanted to clarify. We spoke with the CYC director today. So if you're already a customer and you have your request in to continue for next year, obviously they're in open enrollment through April 29th. You don't need to change it. You don't need to do anything. If, however, you think you're going to need morning or you're going to need some kind of change, they are fully staffed and expecting North Colony phone calls tomorrow. So that phone number, they will be open first thing tomorrow, and you can call and ask them to change. They will honor your change requests. So that number that you see here on your screen, they are waiting. And obviously you just have to have a little patience because typically they end on April 29th. So then it's May 2nd that they put everything in their computers and then mail out the confirmations. So we're still within the enrollment window, and you can call them and they are ready and able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Keels. So let's go to the next one. So the deadline to submit a transportation request for before or after school childcare, that's extended to May 15th. And if you want this, we have embedded the link to the transportation form for grades K-5. It's located there. So that is available. And let's go to the next slide. We have a QR code here. So any questions regarding the transportation schedule, you can just scan this or you can click on that link. And I also want to note too that simultaneously we did send out a letter to the community that essentially summarizes everything that we just talked about, and that letter was simultaneous to this PAC presentation. So if you need to look at that, it's also posted on the website, this letter. Okay, let's go to the next.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, great. So again, if you have questions, you can send them to communications.org in North Colony. And Jane, let's happy to open it up to PAC questions here. So Molly, I know that you mentioned you had some questions.
I did, sorry. And this might be a really silly question, but I'm just wondering what would be the impact in option 2 if the elementary school and the high school was switched in regards to opening time?
We decided to not do that primarily because I think, there was concerns about the early hours for elementary schoolers. Also, I think the late dismissal time for high schoolers is a problem in the sense that it makes accessibility to work. We have students who have to work. We have students who have to provide support, childcare for their families, and now they can be home early and they can provide that support. Also, athletics was another issue as well. So really because of the early start time. We decided that it wouldn't work that well. Ms. Town, do you want to comment from a transportation perspective to what problems that might cause?
I agree with all those points that you said. And in addition, after we do our high school and our middle school runs, those buses, we tie in our non-public transportation with high school and middle school routes. So if we were to flip-flop that and make our heaviest piece, which is the elementary portion, in a different time frame, then we have to add buses and drivers to then support the non-public transportation that we would have to do.
And I appreciate the question, Molly, and I know that is probably prompted by the later start time and the benefits of that. But
Yeah.
I understand that, and it is a difficult decision to make. But I also think too that the other factors of that, the ability for high schoolers and middle schoolers to provide childcare when needed, the need for some students to work, that's an issue, and just the accessibility to after-school activities is another problem. But I understand your point and the reasoning behind your question. Thank you.
Thank you. And just my other question was just around, and I don't know much about the CYC program, but if there's a need for more elementary school families to utilize that because of the late start time, is there any accommodations that are made for that program for families in the district who need financial support?
That's a good area, and I would say that families, we need to look at that, and we have talked about the possibilities of how we would help assist in supervision if that is a problem. So that certainly is a topic we are considering and discussing within the district. So I think it's we would look at options there to make that possible, so that if there was a financial hardship, that we could meet the needs of those families.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your questions. Okay, well, you certainly know that you can, Ms. Weber, what if individuals have questions, what is the best way for them to submit questions to us?
Good evening, Mr. Kaur. So in the communication that went out to families this evening, and it's I'm going to post it on the website, there's a link to a Q&A Google Doc. And if folks have questions or concerns, they can fill out that form. And it will I will be monitoring it as well as other people within the district. I would give you the link, but it's a very, long, jumbly link, so they can look at it on the website and click on it and they'll find it there.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
I just want to say from all the high schoolers, thanks for giving us those extra couple minutes at the end of the day.
Troy, you are a true student advocate. Thank you. Any other questions here? If not, I wish you all the very best for a safe April break, and I hope it's restful and restorative. And thank you very much, and have a good evening.